Welcome to the Thursday edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. I don't always remember to say that, but I got it today. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You can find it all at Panther-Lair.com and, of course, message boards where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. And certainly the Pitt fans have had a lot to say in the last 24 hours, 48 hours, however you want to backtrack it to, about 7 o'clock Tuesday night. I guess we're probably looking at, 36 hours from the time this video published on Thursday morning. You're looking at about 36 hours. There's been lots to discuss for Pitt fans in the wake of Pitt's 34-point win over Louisville. And we talked a lot about that on the Morning Pitt yesterday. Talked a lot about that on the live Panther-Lair show last night. And if you say, oh, no, I missed the Morning Pitt yesterday. I didn't even know you put one out. I thought you took Wednesdays off. We never took Wednesdays off. Oh, no, I missed the live show last night. Oh, I didn't think you did those anymore. We still do those. We always do those. And if you're worried that you missed it, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And if you're concerned about missing it, once you're subscribed, you can turn on notifications and get an alert sent right to your phone, so you never miss any of our exclusive Pitt video content. The Morning Pitt videos we do every day, the post-game press conferences, and definitely if you didn't check those out from Tuesday night, you want to, whether it was Jeff Capel with the Diaz-Graham twins, which was great, or Kenny Payne, the Louisville basketball coach, who was really, really interesting as well, maybe almost as interesting as Capel and the twins. Well, not as interesting as Jorge and Guillermo. Those guys take the cake. I want to interview them after every game. But you might have missed that stuff, but you wouldn't if you're subscribed to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you go to our YouTube channel. The subscribe button while you're watching the video, I got it right there. You can just check it out. You can just click it, and then you are subscribed to this YouTube channel. So I appreciate if you do that. And like I say, like this video, we appreciate that as well. Like I said, we talked, yesterday's Morning Pitt was all about the Louisville game. Last night, we talked a lot of Pitt basketball and the potential for this season and what the Panthers can do. And obviously tomorrow we're going to have a lot of basketball talk heading into this big game at Florida State on Saturday. And we're going to talk a lot about what Pitt can do to avoid a repeat of what happened at the Peterson Event Center last month. And, avoid the trap game and kind of keep up the momentum they've got with their current 4-game winning streak. We're going to talk about all that stuff tomorrow, but I thought we would switch gears just a little bit today because there was actually something I didn't get a chance to talk about when it happened. I think it was when I was out of town 2 weeks ago. Pitt sort of officially announced the seniors who are returning. And this was a topic that we kind of discussed throughout the season. And I shouldn't say throughout the season. I think we talked about it a little bit before the season started. We probably brought it up at some point mid-season, maybe during the off week or something like that. And then I know we talked about it after the season as we sort of started looking at different decisions that guys were making. But Pitt entered this past season with 20 seniors who would have the option to come back for an extra year of eligibility. We're still cycling through those players who were on the team in 2020, the COVID year, the year that was screwed up enough that the NCAA decided they were just going to give everybody a free year of eligibility. And so we're still cycling through those players who will reach the end of their sort of natural eligibility and decide if they want to take an extra year of unnatural eligibility, I guess we could call it. Super seniors is the term that it's come to be. It could be a 6th-year senior. It could be a guy who never redshirts in his first 4 years and gets an opportunity to play a 5th year. Kenny Pickett took advantage of that opportunity last year. All those offensive linemen that came back for Pitt. I should say Kenny Pickett took advantage of that opportunity in 2021 to come back as a 5th-year senior or super senior. Last year, Pitt had a bunch of offensive linemen, Carter Warren and Gabe Hoy and Owen Drexel and Marcus Minor, all decided to come back for 2022 as super seniors. And the trend continued this year where Pitt entered the season with, potentially 20 guys on the roster who could come back as super seniors in 2023. And, we kind of kept this list of 20 guys in mind throughout the season, throughout the preseason, throughout the season, and into the offseason as we said, well, will they or won't they? What are they going to do? Are they going to come back or are they going to leave? And we now have final decisions on all 20 guys. And we don't necessarily know all of their destinations. There's a couple guys that I haven't seen actually announce anything, but we just know they're not coming back. It's sort of a 2 a.m. at the bar. It doesn't matter where you go, but you can't stay here. Or it doesn't matter where you go, but you're not staying here. And a couple guys decided they're just not staying here. I don't know if they're still sort of weighing their options and looking at what the future might hold, but I haven't seen any kind of announcement on where they're going. We just know they're not going to be back at Pitt. And so, like I say, I think it was 2 weeks ago when I was out of town, Pitt sort of made it official with everybody who was coming back, which by extension, by process of elimination, makes it official with everybody who is not coming back, although most of those players had already made their announcements. But we didn't really get a chance to talk about it. Like I said, I was out of town. By the time I got back in, there was plenty of basketball stuff to discuss. And so I thought we could talk about those seniors today and the decisions that they made. Now, like I said, there were 20 guys who entered this past season, the 2022 season, as seniors, either seniors or redshirt seniors, who would have the option to return for an extra year of eligibility. And as we go through those 20, I've got 4 players who decided to transfer, 4 who decided to go to the NFL, 9 who are coming back, and 2 who are just gone. You know what I mean? Like, I guess they're going to finish their Pitt education and either hang up the football career or maybe pursue a transfer to a lower level or something over the summer. We'll see, but they're gone. And we'll talk about them in a second. Now, if you add that up, 4 plus 4 plus 9 plus 2, that's 19. Now, I said there were 20 players. Well, let's start with that number 20, that extra guy, because it's Brandon George. And Brandon George is a unique situation. And this actually, I got hung up on this as I was making my list and checking it twice, as one is wont to do in the first week or second week of February. As I was going through my list, I was looking at it, I'm like, okay, I got these guys are going to the NFL, these guys are transferring, these guys aren't coming back, these guys are coming back. Why is this only adding up to 19? And then I realized Brandon George. And Brandon George is a unique situation. He's a guy who played all 4 years. Well, I should say he played his first 3 years, and then he played this past season, his 4th season, as a true senior, never redshirting, but he got hurt and only ended up playing, I believe, in 4 games, which allowed him the opportunity to still apply a redshirt. So he is coming back to Pitt in 2023, but not as a super senior, rather as a redshirt senior. So Brandon George will actually be a 5th-year senior, a sort of traditional 5th-year senior as a redshirt senior in 2023. And he'll be back on our list to discuss next offseason as he mulls over the options of whether or not to return as a super senior, a 6th-year super senior for the 2024 season. So our numbers are already down from 20 down to 19. Look at us. We are moving along. Now, let's go to the transfers next. 4 of these players decided they are going to use their super senior year, but they're going to go elsewhere. They're going to transfer. And I mean, you know this list. This isn't like building some suspense. Keaton Slovis is transferring to BYU. Vincent Davis is transferring to UNLV. John Morgan transferred to Arkansas. Judson Tallender transferred to Akron. 4 guys who are going to play as super seniors just somewhere else. And, you know, in some of those cases, I don't know if the coaches told anyone to go. In some of those cases, they might not have encouraged them to stay. I don't particularly care for a coach saying maybe we wanted that guy to leave, at least saying it publicly and on the record. I'm not really sure what's gained by that. But nevertheless, these 4 guys transferring and moving on. And, you know, I mean, I think when you look down that list of 4, it's probably debatable about who leaves the biggest hole. Keaton Slovis, Vincent Davis, John Morgan, or Judson Tallender. I think even if Keaton Slovis returned, there was probably going to be a battle for the starting quarterback job. I think Vincent Davis had already been passed over by 2 guys. Even if one of those guys left for the NFL, the other one returned. And quite frankly, maybe even passed over by 3 guys. When you look at the carries in that regular season finale at Miami, Sibo Flemister was getting more carries than Vincent Davis, which may or may not have expedited Vincent Davis's departure, himself being a Miami Fort Lauderdale native and not able to get carries in a blowout win in Miami in the regular season finale. Sibo Flemister getting the work ahead of him. But I mean, you know, if you're Vincent Davis, you look at it, you say, well, Izzy Abanikanda passed me, Rodney Hammond passed me, and now apparently Sibo Flemister's passed ahead of me on the depth chart as well. I'm not staying here. I'm going somewhere else for my final year. So you understand that situation. John Morgan, I think it really was a case where Pitt is sort of ready to move on with the younger defensive ends. And that might even mean taking some lumps along the way. But I think if you bring back a veteran player like John Morgan for another year, you're probably running the risk of losing one or two of those younger DNs who says, man, I don't want to sit behind this guy anymore. And not anything personal against John Morgan, but, I don't want to sit behind upperclassmen anymore. I want to get my opportunity. I want to be in the two deep. Young guys like Nikai Johnson or Sam Okunlola, they want to play. And I think you risk the next 3 years just in favor of the next year if you don't have sort of the turnover there. And Judson Tallender was probably another guy who saw the writing on the wall. I mean, when Javon McIntyre, is seemingly playing ahead of him at boundary safety, I'm sure the coaches would like to have that veteran depth returning and some of the experience that Tallender has, but McIntyre seems to be ahead of him. And so if you see a younger player ahead of you on the depth chart, it's not a lot to come back to. So you take those 4 guys out going the transfer route, and then you have 4 guys who went to the NFL. Jared Wayne made his decision. Haba Baldonado made his decision. Servassier Dennis going to the NFL. And Eric Hallett going to the NFL as well. And sort of, I guess, the interesting thing about this, and we've seen these guys get sort of different reviews and praise and whatnot from their, like the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl and these postseason bowl games. There are opportunities to show who they are, what they can do, work with college coaches and all that. And then the announcement actually came yesterday about the NFL Draft Combine. 6 Pitt players invited there. Only 2 of the guys that we just mentioned, of Jared Wayne, Haba Baldonado, Servassier Dennis, and Eric Hallett, out of those 4, only Baldonado and Dennis were invited to the NFL Draft Combine. Kalijah Cansey will be there, Brandon Hill, Carter Warren, and Izzy Abanikanda are the other 4. So a group of 6 that doesn't even include all these guys who made the decision to go now instead of coming back for one more year at Pitt. And that's not necessarily to say they made the right decision or the wrong decision. I think that's something you kind of decide after the fact, at the end, after the draft. You see if you got drafted, if it was the right call or not, or if you could have helped your stock by coming back. I think a guy like Servassier Dennis probably wasn't going to be able to help his stock much more with another year in college. I really don't know that Eric Hallett would have been either. I think he probably had his stock about as high as it was going to get in the wake of this past season. Jared Wayne, goes for almost 1,100 yards, has a 1,000-yard season. I think ended his career on a really high note. Probably could have expanded his game a little bit more as a 5th-year senior in 2023, but I don't know how much he could have added. And Haba Baldonado, I think, probably could have shown more, but he was hurt quite a bit. And, rather than run the risk of coming back and going through that again, decided to go and just take his chances. He made a good name for himself. I think he was at the Senior Bowl or the Shrine Bowl. I forget which one he was at, but he made a good name for himself there, and now he's going to get to go to the Combine and have a chance to show what he can do in that situation. So those are the 4 guys going to the NFL. The 2 guys who are just gone, I don't know what they're going to do next. Maybe they're going to hang it up, Nick Patty and Chris Maloney. Haven't seen any real announcement from either guy. Obviously, we talked to Nick Patty here on the Morning Pitt. Had a conversation with him last month at some point, early January, I think it was. It was a great conversation. At that point, he said he hadn't decided yet what he was going to do. I think he was leaning toward hanging it up, but he said he wasn't entirely sure just quite yet. And Chris Maloney, I think, former walk-on, played a bit, went on scholarship, played a bit at defensive end, but probably just going to move on and move on with his life's work, as they say. But we'll see. We'll keep an eye on those guys. All right, down to the real nuts and bolts of this thing, the guys who are coming back, which is ultimately what was most interesting here, most relevant here is, Pitt gets ready to head into spring camp in a few weeks. They start working towards the 2023 season. 9 seniors coming back, plus Brandon George. So we should include him, I guess. 10 out of the original list of 20 coming back. George among them. And we'll just kind of go down the list. Sebo Flemister, coming back at running back, I think is an important return for Pitt. I think he showed some flashes. Often, I mean, he didn't get a lot of opportunities during the season, which is to be expected when you have Izzy Abanikanda doing what he did this season and Rodney Hammond behind him. But he got some more opportunities late in the year. I think the Miami game, he had some good opportunities and showed what he potentially could do. I think that was an encouraging performance, but more so, you just needed some veteran depth. You needed some experienced players. You've got Rodney Hammond coming back. You expect him to be the number one running back, but you needed more behind him. Flemister offers experienced depth. Derek Davis transferring in from LSU, at least he's been in college for a couple years. He only has 11 career rushing attempts, but he's been in college. He's been in a college strength program. He's played in college games, so he brings that to the room, and they needed some of that because after those guys, it's freshmen. It's Montrevious Lloyd and TJ Harvison. Harvison's here now, and certainly that's a position where a freshman can play and excel, and we've seen it. But you'd like to have some guys who are a little bit older, a little bit more mature physically and mentally. And that's what they got back with Sebo Flemister. So I think that's a good addition or return for the running back room. And then on the offensive line, they got two big ones in Jake Cradle and Blake Zabovic. And I think these are big returns. And I was pretty sure these guys were going to come back. I didn't know for sure. We had to wait until there was an official announcement to really be sure. But getting these two guys back, I think, is really big. Because, I think last year when Warren and Minor and Hoy and Drexel all announced they were returning, there was a thought that, well, that's good, but now you're just kicking the can down the road one more year while, that inevitable sort of turnover where you're going to have to go to a bunch of younger guys with no experience. Well, now we're a year later, and Pitt's actually not in this sort of thin position or situation that we thought they would be. They get Cradle and Zabovic back. That's big. Those are 2-year interior line spots. But because of all the injuries they had on the offensive line last season, Matt Gonsalves comes back after starting every game last year. Branson Taylor comes back after starting a bunch of games last year. Now you've got 4 out of 5 basically returning starters in Gonsalves, Taylor, Cradle, and Zabovic. And you really only need to fill in Ryan Jacoby, who played a whole bunch, admittedly at tight end, but he was on the field getting that experience last season. And now all of a sudden, instead of this being kind of the fresh start offensive line with a bunch of young guys and no experience, you've got 4 returning starters and a 5th guy who played a ton of snaps. You've got an offensive line that looks like it should be able to pick up where last year's line left off and maybe even improve on what they did. Because you also have Ryan Baer waiting in the wings there, and he might not wait for long to fight his way onto the field. I think getting Cradle and Zabovic back, I think Pitt's offensive line was positioned to be better in 2023 than we probably expected it would be a year ago. Like, I think a year ago when we talked about the 2023 offensive line, we probably didn't think it was going to be we probably didn't think that the expectations were going to be high. Now, I think they are, and I think they should be. And I think there's a potential for this group to be pretty good, and a big part of it is Cradle and Zabovic coming back. I think that's huge. Kind of across the line, they've got all 3 of the senior defensive tackles coming back: Tyler Bentley, Devin Danielson, and David Green. I figured all 3 of these guys would be back, unless Pitt was trying to sort of affect a youth movement at defensive tackle like they sort of are at defensive end. I kind of figured all 3 of these. I don't see these 3 guys as being early departures for the NFL. They're just solid players who do their jobs and kind of take care of business in the interior of the line. They're going to need somebody to step up to be a playmaker. I'm not sure if it's going to be one of those 3 or if it's going to be a guy like Elliott Donald or Sean Fitzsimmons even. I think somebody else is going to be able to, and maybe a couple younger players will be able to work their way into that rotation. But having that leadership in the D-line room at the D-tackle position, I think is big. I also think it's big to get Shane Simon back for another year. They lose Tyler Wiltz. He was out of eligibility. He didn't have the option to come back. They lose Servassier Dennis to the NFL. They get Brandon George back. And they have Solomon DeShields and Bengali Kamara coming back as well. So they've got kind of a good group of backers, I think. And then you add a guy, you return a guy like Shane Simon to give, again, veteran leadership and experience back into that group. And even though they're losing Gervasier Dennis, it seems like they should be able to pick up where they left off and build on what they did last year, where I think the linebackers steadily got better over the course of the season. And then you get 2 corners back. You get more than that back, but you get 2 guys who could have left. They end up deciding to return as super seniors in Marquez Williams and A.J. Woods. They're both coming back to really help bolster that secondary. There was an alternate universe or a different scenario or a different timeline where Pitt loses like 4 defensive backs. Eric Hallett goes to the NFL. Brandon Hill goes to the NFL. Those things happened. Marquez Williams could leave the NFL. A.J. Woods could be done because he's played 4 years. He's a 4-year senior or was a 4th-year senior last year. And you could lose all 4 of those guys and be really hurting in the secondary. But now you're bringing Williams and Woods back. You got valuable reps for Javon McIntyre and some decent playing time for P.J. O'Brien late in the season last year. And you also have M.J. Devonshire returning. And it really seems to me like they're going to have to work on the safety spots. They're going to have to and they brought in Donovan McMillan as a transfer to help fill in the safety positions. They're going to have to work on the safety spots, but it really looks like that group should be pretty strong. Again, once the safeties get settled in, I don't see any reason that the secondary will be a vulnerability at all, particularly with Williams and Woods coming back. It gives them another year to help try and nurture and grow some of those younger defensive backs and get up into the rotation to be ready for next season. I think it's a good group of 9-10 returning players if you include Brandon George, guys who can fill valuable roles this year while not necessarily blocking too many of the younger players at their positions and still helping the team win and build for the future, serving as mentors and leaders for the younger players at those spots. So I think this is a good group that returns, 9 super seniors coming back. I think year after year, those numbers will drop. You'll have fewer and fewer guys who are either still here by that point in their career, or fewer and fewer guys who decide to take the opportunity to come back as a super senior. I think you'll see those numbers go down steadily until 2 years from now or whenever it is we kind of fully cycle through all of those potential super seniors, and it's not a conversation we have to have anymore in a couple years. We'll get to that point. We're not there yet. We'll have this conversation again next year for sure. All right, so that's the super seniors. Those are the guys who are coming back to help the Pitt football team in 2023. We'll be back tomorrow to help you get ready for Pitt, Florida State on Saturday. A big game for the Panthers. Every game here on out. All 7 regular season games, however many ACC tournament games, and however many NCAA tournament games they play, they're all going to be big. By the way, Tuesday night, Pitt clinched a winning season, their first winning record since the 2015-2016 season. Jamie Dixon's last year. The long drought of losing seasons is over. How about that? We'll have a lot to talk about it for sure on tomorrow's Morning Pitt and lots of other topics, everything from this week as we get ready for Pitt, Florida State. So make sure you tune in for that. In the meantime, stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Thanks for watching the video today. We really appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe and do all those things that YouTube content creators like to ask you to do. So you do that. You have a great Thursday. We will talk to you tomorrow morning for the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.